1.
You are listening to the Overwatch Rundown, a weekly podcast covering the latest in the esports scene of competitive Overwatch. Today is Sunday, April 29th, and we are covering Week 4 of Stage 3 of the Overwatch League. Another week, Jax. This one we were just talking briefly, but maybe not the most exciting week. We've had worse weeks, but you know, we're coming down from a couple of weeks of intense action in Overwatch League, and we arrive at a week where perhaps the action not so hot.
I was just looking at that. I was comparing the number of 5-game series we had in week 3 to week 4. We had 4 5-game series in week 4. We had 5 in week 3. So it's not that big a difference. It's just the level of play in the other games that didn't go 5 were just a bit of a letdown. Just all the way across the board. I mean, I just took a glance at the first day, and it's like, yeah, there's nothing remarkable about that day. It was 3 games where if they hadn't been streamed, I wouldn't have felt bad about missing those games.
And to keep on with the heat metaphor, Jax, why don't we talk about being burned up at the stage? If it was intense before, it's certainly a slow simmer right now, both in terms of viewership. I mean, viewership's still there. Numbers are still pretty high. Maybe that's the reward system.
I think they're still averaging above
100K.
Over 100K.
Yeah.
I mean, if you add in all 3 of the channels, the French, the Korean, and the English channels,
for
sure. But if you're just looking at the English channel, I think they still average above 100K. There was a couple of games like on day 1. I mean, tell you, day 1 was a snore. I think by the time I got to Dallas versus Florida, it was under 100,000, I believe, and it is odd because Dallas.
I don't blame it, but
Dallas is one of the more popular teams despite their record.
Let's talk about that day first off. I mean, first off, you started the week with Boston versus Dragons, and nobody's surprised to see. Everyone's rooting for Shanghai, I think, at this point. Pretty much everyone's. Yeah. No one's like, screw you, Shanghai. I don't want you to go whenever. I'm sure there's somebody out there on the internet that is. But even so, I think viewership of those games, and myself included, generally expect a pretty poor game coming out of those series right now, for good reason. The Valiant versus Outlaws, I was expecting more out of it. Didn't end up being that interesting. And then we had the dud of the week, I would call it, in the Fuel versus Mayhem. I mean,
looking at it, for second game of our picks last week, I took the Outlaws, you took the Valiant. I don't know why. I think about it now. I wish I had the replay here for me. I don't know why I picked Outlaws. I have no idea.
Oh, that aside, though, we're talking about burnout here, and Jax, the viewership maybe not getting burned out in the sense of they're showing up again, maybe for rewards. I mean, it's questionable if these numbers are inflated because of those, but the other burnout we really need to talk about is of players. Maybe also the wrist burning up on some players. If I'm going to extend the metaphor yet again, look, that's 3 times.
I'm afraid my brain burned out because I was talking about Houston this. They lost, but they won. But when it comes to burnout, though, the Dallas Fuel, right? Trying to move away from fire and flame and fuel because that's
that's the Outlaws thing with flame, clearly.
But people were, and even some of the casters and analysts, they try to talk about Effect as being an MVP candidate for this season.
You are not going to get that, though, Jax.
Effect has played very well, but I have to ask you, can you give someone MVP when they disappear in the middle of a stage, Lepelos? Effect is back in Korea on vacation.
Absolutely not. I mean, clearly he's important to their team, but I think it would be sort of an insult to the Fuel, honestly, if they treat him as the MVP of the Overwatch League and put him in contention for that when they're struggling so deeply, and as a team that is being focused on player-oriented strategies or coordination, as they've sort of released and talked about. Perhaps Custa let us in on that more than others, but you can't look at him being an MVP if he's not a team leader, and team leaders do not leave halfway through the season to go home and have a rest.
I mean, mentally, he looking at his tweets, I think mentally he was burned out. Physically, as far as his play, one of his last games, everybody's talking about Effect is doing all that he can. It's just not enough, and
we know he's carried fights for Envious back before the Overwatch League, and indeed it looked like there was a number of times here in Overwatch League he is the reason why They won a couple of games here and there. And so, yeah, he's a valuable player on their team, but most valuable player, I think, has to go deeper. And the team struggling around him doesn't really provide him the opportunity to earn that spot. But, Jax, if we're talking about other players, one that's already being rested, we can talk about Pine on NYXL coming back into more and more play these days after.
Pine, again, I don't think it wasn't a physical thing. It was a mental issue where mentally he wasn't prepared to play in stage two. The Excelsior still went on to win stage two even without the big boss man. And it's something that it's looking to be more and more not for some players. It is physical. If you look at Birdering with the wrist issue, it's physical. Zumba, I think they mentioned Zumba had was it a wrist? He had
I
some
believe it was
physical.
wrist.
Yeah, I believe it was a wrist injury for him, which might be why we're still seeing so much Zephyr in place of Zumba. So there are some physical things of them playing because since they play so much, they have to practice as well. And that's a lot of repetitive, let's just say a lot of repetitive stress on the joints, right? On the wrist specifically. So I get that if they're being arrested for that, but I'm looking more of it being a mental thing. We go back to the previous stage where, and we heard a little bit about it from Huck when he was on Oversight last week. Gamsu, main tank for Boston, where he needed a reset.
Yeah.
Like they're going so hard for these games, for 2 games a week, right? But that's practice. I mean, if you think about it, how much do they practice every day? And for a lot of these guys, I think they just need something not Overwatch, right?
In their
I
lives.
look
Yeah.
because they play, they practice, and then they sit down and they stream more Overwatch. And it's like, how do you handle it? Because as tough as being a professional is, can you imagine having to practice for 6 hours a day, doing VOD review, doing analysis with your coach and analyst levels, and then after all of that, you eat dinner and you go down and you play ranked competitive?
Yeah, no, I think
Are
that's
you kidding me, dude?
I think that's horrible for their
No
mental
chance.
attitude.
No chance,
Absolutely.
man.
But Jax, there are teams that can handle better than others. I mean, even Florida has said that their commute in the first stage were affecting them. Or sorry, they
I
haven't
mean,
said that, but the indications are with
here's
how
the deal.
they decided to move that's there, that was
Having
an issue.
lived in Los Angeles my entire life and reading that Tavik was the one, quote unquote, driving the bus to the stadium every game day or practice, because they also practice. See, usually it's every day. It's not just game day because they practice there at the Blizzard offices. Lepelos, traffic into Burbank where it's held. It's I almost use the expletive. It's bad, and let me just put it that way. It is bad. Traffic in Los Angeles and its surrounding areas is bad, and it's stressful. There are studies about it everywhere, right? It's not something that's made up. You are stressed after driving in insane traffic, especially in this damn city. But it's something that just adds on. But yet, Tavik, we're not hearing anything about him being burned out. I see him streaming all the time. So it's just that some play. I don't want to say they're stronger because that's actually not right. It's just I don't know the right words for it because mental health is important.
It absolutely is. It has an impact for the team, and this comes into the discussion. I think why some teams have been substituting a lot of players in, even though
Right.
they're not the best. Obviously, it comes down to, like, we've criticized it. We were talking about this as well in the precast,
In
which is,
in pregame show, yeah.
let's just mention it, Spitfire under fire from analysts everywhere for
Yeah.
bringing in depth of roster that they have and have tried to be working on. I think, it might come into more play for them better in stage 4. Here in stage 3, they've looked weak, although I think that's more of them going through a funk and not having Bird Ring available at all because of injury. I think it's a smart decision to have people on the ready, on the go, on the bench, and I've already laid out 4 teams what I think they should do. You get up 3-1, you put in your second string team, you get a rest out there on stage for everyone else, right? Like you practice everybody as much as you can.
I think it's hard to find a balance. Like I was saying in the pregame, so I remember a specific. I don't remember what game it was, but I remember after I went back and looked at my notes that the London Spitfire played 10 different players during the course of a 4 or 5 game series. I think it went to 5. And the problem I have then is how do you get the consistency that you and I love, right? How do you get to keep that momentum and the synergy that's needed with 6 players
I
when
mean,
you make so many changes? Look, they were switching out half their team every other map.
You have to accept that. Like, this is part of the training and part of doing it. Like, saying you're going to be six forever and playing the amount of games that you're doing right now, idea, that's going to be ancient when one of these teams finally cracks out
Right.
two team roster essentially of players that could be starters in our current setup, because there's players out there that can do that. What it really
I
is
mean,
going to take
let's
is
see.
managing of attitudes and everything else in order to do
I
that,
I
and
mean,
that's going to be difficult.
I hate to just focus on London, but I kind of have to here because London started the season with that. They literally had two full teams, Kaldu Pantera and GC Busan,
Yep.
and we don't know exactly why they sold Rascal to the Fuel and sold Fisher to the Gladiators, but we see where Fisher went from being on the bench for London to being one of the best tanks in the league. Rascal, we don't know what or how good he is because of the
The
disaster that
pathway
is
that
the
he took.
Dallas Fuel, but it's obviously hard to manage that much talent. And I firmly believe that some of them reason why they were traded is because they weren't getting the time and they were unhappy and they
Yep.
were voicing it. And so you can't have that voice in, the quote unquote locker room because it drags them down. So
You're absolutely right with that, and that comes down to qualities that you're looking for players. Listen, Fisher has mentioned Bishu has a special quality. There are players across sports everywhere that already have that are stars, that are team players that can play the second string and play it at a high level
right.
and won't cause these issues.
I mean,
Rascal, I don't think is one of those issues or one of
let's
those
let's
players,
let's take a look at the New York Excelsior. We have for them they don't have a 12-man roster. They have a somewhat deep roster. They have
particularly
what
with
three
Tank
they have
and
three DPS that they can
yeah.
rotate out. They have
I don't want to talk about this too long, Jax. We're going to move
supports.
on here
Well,
into the rundown.
I yeah, I get it, but when it comes to New York, you've got Mano and Giannis, and I have been super critical of Giannis because anytime he comes in, that team looks bad. They go from looking like the best team in the league to maybe one of the best five teams in the league. And I'm we can only this was being told to us by the casters and analysts that they're trying to rotate Giannis in and keep him involved in seeing the different play style that he brings, and as a result they're willing to take the hit, right? They don't lose the series, they win most of their series, but they're willing to take the map hit, right? Because what is it we always hear? Every map matters. For New York, every map doesn't matter, because if
Yeah.
every map matters, Mano would start every game until they were comfortable with their first place position. Like right now, the New York Excelsior is fighting with the Boston Uprising for that first place in stage 3. They have it overall, but in stage 3, they're still fighting for it. Even though they're fighting for it, they're willing to experiment because they're trying to find the right balance when it comes to the main tank. And I'm looking at that as saying, okay, is that how you do it? Do you do it one position at a time instead of two or three like London was doing? We'll see.
Different approaches, but time will tell. I think both of these teams over the long term will do better because of it. Jax, let's go ahead and talk about how the teams performed this week, though, in the Overwatch League, as we finished week 4.
All right.
As I said earlier, we started with Boston and Shanghai Dragons. Jax, listen, this one does not take us long to cover here what happened between these two teams. Boston indeed ended up winning over the Shanghai Dragons, although not without a little bit of blood spilled on Route 66 at the end, where Dragons able to pull back the one map with a 3-2 win over Boston. That's pretty huge considering Uprising on a tear in this
I mean,
stage.
it's good that they got a win, and it's also interesting. I wish I had it in front of me, but Route 66, it was a map they played on the previous week. I want to say it was against Florida. Yeah, it was against Florida, where Florida was. I'm just double checking here. Yeah, Florida was held to 79.3 meters, and Shanghai sadly was held to 73.4. Right, so it's shocking that both teams would be held before the first point. But what I'm getting at is it's a map that Shanghai is actually performing on Lepelos. So
They
they
improved here.
yes, they have improved and they took a map here. And so if you're a Shanghai fan, sadly, this stage is coming to an end, but it's for the first time we can say it's something Shanghai might actually be good at, is
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
And can we also mention here as well, they're putting points on the board on other maps as well. So that's good. Jax, let's go ahead and talk about a game that you and I had different predictions. I predicted Valiant. I expected
Right.
big things out as soon here. You predicted Outlaws, and it was all Outlaws off the start. 2-1 Anubis, 1-0 Blizzard World, 2-1 Nepal. That was enough for the Outlaws for the 3-1 victory. Valiant getting the full hold on Junkertown for a 2-0 there. Too late, though, for them. Jax, what did you see coming that I didn't? I'm asking you because I know you're not prepared to answer that question. Because how can you expect Outlaws to show up so strongly off the start here against Valiant when Valiant has done so well this?
I mean, I guess part of it was like looking at it now. It's the maps that I think if we go back and look at it, I think I might have even said this. It's the maps that were in this pool: Anubis, Blizzard World, Nepal, and Junkertown. 2 of those maps are Jake maps. And when I say Jake maps, I mean typical of Anubis and Junkertown are maps where he can play Junkrat and get things done.
You could also argue Blizzard World teams have been running Junkrat as they did,
right?
And it worked
and
on A point. So
the key thing about Blizzard World, and it's one, I don't understand really, is we saw one of the newest signings for the Los Angeles Valiant come in, KSF.
Yes.
He came over from Contenders he got thrown into the deep end here, Lepelos, against the Houston Outlaws, and it just didn't end well for them. And they were,
I honestly did not like him getting playtime yet. I don't feel like that was enough time to get him up to speed.
It was an odd positioning on the second map in. Okay, the reason why I say it's odd is because it's Blizzard World, and you take out agilities and you take out Soon. Like they took out agilities and Soon and brought in KSF and Bunny. And the reason it's odd for me is because Blizzard World still sees a lot of Widow. And Linkser is a good Widow, and so either you take a Widow of your own, or you say you're gonna do it somewhere else, right? With a Genji, or some other method that you're gonna deal with this Widowmaker. And I'm not sure KSF was ready for that, and obviously the numbers kind of back me up. I don't understand. You can't make that kind of DPS switch, man. Not against Houston Outlaws, who, yes, they're not as good as they were in Stage 1. Still a really strong team. Still, I mean, if you think about Blizzard World first point, and you have to get past the first point before you do anything, what do we see on first point all the time? Widow, Junkrat. They have 2 of the best at those positions, Houston.
Yeah, no, it's very questionable, Jax. Let's move on, though. Next game, Dallas Fuel versus Florida Mayhem. This one, it's battle of the bottom teams here. Again, Jax, and as I said, it was sort of a dud of a game, and that dud mainly falling on the on the Fuel. Sorry, not Fusion.
I mean, we got to see Coco again,
Yeah, Coco coming into play. Effect out, though, so you had low expectations going into this game. We had both picked Mayhem here, and we were unsurprised to see them win. They didn't even have to worry about that much because Effect was out of the game. I don't think we knew about that when we made the pick. That would have only made it more. Here, though, the big surprise, Fuel managing to hold on Junkertown where they needed to in order to get the 4-3 on that map, in order to at least take one map off of Florida.
The one thing that I meant to mention, Lepelos, in the previous series, Valiant versus Houston, is I was looking at Junkertown as one of the reasons why they were going to win, and
they lost it.
Junkertown was the map that they lost. They were full held for the first time ever. I think Jake unable to work his magic on the map. So it's something, perhaps there is a weakness there that can be exploited, but since I forgot to mention, it's the only reason why I went back.
Jax,
going forward here now, Dallas versus Florida.
I mean, there's not much more to say than that.
Care.
Like they had a bit for it. Yeah, let's go ahead. We're already Jax. Let's just keep on moving.
Seagull and all the other. We saw Seagull, Taimu, and Coco, right? I haven't seen them. It was good to see them. That's about all I can say I liked about it.
Seagull did some work on Junkertown. Maybe it would have been nice to see him come out on DPS earlier in the season. Anyways, Jax, let's go ahead and move on to day 2, though. Gladiators versus London. You talk about magic. What do Gladiators have going for them, man? Shields up right off the
What are you talking about? What's going for them? Fisher. No one's better.
I mean, that's certainly true for the most part. There are still some cracks in that shield, and we'll talk about that. 4-3 Volskaya Industries starting out Gladiators. 3-0 Blizzard World. And then, Jax, we have to talk about the cracks. Ilios 2-1
I just want to point
Spitfires.
out that in the predictions for this week, you agreed with me and took the Gladiators over the Spitfire.
I did. Okay. Route 66, 3-2 London, pushing it to Game 5 in Jax. It was a close Game 5 on Oasis here. I'm pretty sure Gladiators did their best to try and throw the match even in the overtime match or overtime
I said
match,
it in Discord more than once. I'm a Gladiators fan, but I am annoyed with them. And I'm concerned because they lack a killer instinct, and killer instinct is what champions have. When it comes time to it, you you knock them out, right?
We're
You
gonna come
don't
back
let them
around to
stay
that though,
into it.
Jax, because this
But
is not the only time we have to talk about it.
don't remind me.
Like,
But
I'm unfortunate, but here they were able to close it out, and that's an important storyline.
if it wasn't Oasis, and even then they were lucky. If it wasn't Oasis, they wouldn't have closed it out. Sat London, just
Can
this
I ask
map
you
is
how you felt about Surefour's performance on the first map or two here
no
against
sure
London?
for. Listen, no one more critical than Surefour than I was. He has figured it out, and I think I even say later on after the second game that if Surefour was able to play Widow at this level, at the level he's playing it right now in the previous stages, the Gladiators would be in a much better position for the overall season 1 playoff picture. He's playing phenomenal. He has replaced Asher as best Widow, even though Asher hardly ever played Widow. It's just Surefour is recovering some of what he lost in between the transition from Cloud9 to Los Angeles Gladiators. Fantastic work there. Asher for me is the one I've got a big question mark over because he's inconsistent, and you know me, I like consistency. But then I also have to ask Levelos. They brought in Silk Thread from the Valiant, and he's kind of disappeared again, like he did for the Valiant. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
still question marks remain about there. Jax,
For
you had a
for
question mark going in about the Shock this week, saying this is a big week for them. First game up here against New York,
I mean,
Excelsior.
you and I both picked the Excelsior, right? It's just we wanted
Yeah.
to see how Shock would fight back against the best team in the league.
And they started off hot. They showed a great defense there on Temple of Anubis B point in order to win Temple of Anubis 2-1. Great start for them. They looked like they were ready, and then it starts to fall. Bonnie, they only get 1 point, don't even make the second. New York Excelsior easily make that distance 2-1. Nepal, they keep it close. It's a 2-1 on Nepal. And then Junkertown, just not enough again to defend against that NYXL attack as they push through with a fair amount of ease in the third phase here, 3-2. They clearly practice hard. They try to compete, but they're still a couple of steps behind New York Excelsior.
This I'm somewhat confused because if you look at the rosters here for San Francisco versus New York, we didn't see 150K Sinatra at all. We didn't see Baby Bay. That one not so much a surprise. We just saw Architect and Dante on every map, and we even at the very end there, Lepelos, we saw Nomi and Super being played at the same time, which I think you and I both had questions about that because at one point Nomi was playing main tank and Super went over to play Zenyatta since Sleepy was on
they
the
talked
bench.
about this on their little interview clip
Okay,
too, about how it was like Super's idea that he would switch over to Zen, and listen, cute strategy.
Lepos, do you try Q strategies against the best team in the league?
Not unless it's well practiced, Jax. Like I don't mind having radical strategies.
I know.
And so honestly, I don't mind them trying to bring this out here. Because they're going into their bag of tricks. They're saying what we had on Junkertown was not working and would not work against these guys. Let's try something different that might throw them. Okay. And it worked on their attack in the first couple of phases, like their tank heavy lineup. I honestly would have preferred them just to remain on a unique strat in the third phase with the skills that they had there, and just see if New York Excelsior could handle the weirdness coming out. Because honestly, a lot of these teams are practiced to handle one thing. When you throw different things at them, they don't know what to do. So Dynasty, I'm looking at you.
You know what I say about the Korean teams, right? One of their best attributes is their preparation, and if you throw something at them that they're not ready for, that's when you yourself have a better chance of winning. Sadly, I mean, honestly, here I'm kind of sad because I didn't get to see 150K versus
Sabobi
at all. Yeah. It's just
they're saving the title fight for the featherweight class.
Dante didn't do bad. It's just I think they were a little too rigid with it, and
which is odd because then they went into the last map being super.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we're on to the last map of day 2, Lepelos, the Seoul Dynasty versus Philadelphia Fusion. It also happens to be our featured game of the week. And what an interesting game this was.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead into it, Jax? Starting on Anubis here, Dynasty going on attack first here.
Lepos, you have to be concerned if you're a Dynasty fan, because when they come out, when they walk out, there's no Fleta.
Yeah.
There's no Fleta, and once again, I'm sitting here. What are the coach? Mind is blown because they have keyed in for Fleta, and
We've
I
seen
think
this.
they're
They do this
throwing,
all the
but
time on Anubis because they
it,
love that Junkrat defense here. But
we'll
the
we'll get
Junkrat
into that at
defense
the end. Yeah,
Junkrat defense working here for Fusion as well. EQO, wow, EQO doing well on that Junkrat off the start here, and we had Carpe on the Widow doing work as well.
the only reason they got this first point in Lepelos is Carpe was forced off the Widowmaker in the second to last fight and had to come back on the Tracer.
Yeah,
So that made that
interestingly though, they even when that switch happens, Jax, Fusion were able to hold that specific fight partly
exactly.
because that Tracer switch.
They held that fight, and then when they pushed in the very next fight, you know what happened? Carpe died first to Jaehong, so it was Zen killing Tracer. That's already a man advantage. He can't be revived because of the position and when he died in, and Soul used that to get the first point. Because Carpe wasn't able to get the output out that he had been, it was Soul just walked in. So I mean, it was good that they forced him off by killing him on Widow in the previous fight and forced him to rush back as Tracer. Um, but from there, that's about the only good thing they had, Lepelos. But what about their B point attack, which they had 4 minutes because it was overtime capture just about for a first point. They had 4 minutes to push the second point, and in that 4 minutes, they didn't get anything done.
Yeah, EQO again doing a lot of heavy lifting here. There's three things I want to mention: the long diva stagger after the
Disgusting.
questionable prime
That's
but that
disgusting.
beautiful stagger there by Fusion on that. Miro dying again and then again in the following two fights, and that set up the final thing, which is a 3.5 kill rip tire for the final hold.
Miro's okay. After Zephyr got staggered like that, Miro came in and he leapt in and he died instantly. And I sat there and blinked my eyes a few times. What in the world was he just doing? And he did it again, and he did it like 4 times,
In
three
total,
or four times this push. And it's like, what is this? I said to myself, he's practicing his I Remix Roshan impersonation, man. This was awful play from Miro. And in the current meta, main tank is too important to be that bad at it.
and
So
if it's
when I
not
see that
him
they're
though,
yeah,
if it's not him, and then it's team communication /
well, plus
coordination.
they all speak the same
I,
language.
I'm not saying it's a language issue. I'm saying they're not on the same page. Jax, let's see if they're on the page on their defense though. The comps basically switch sides with the
Yeah.
teams, as we had Munchkin on that Widowmaker, we had
He had
Wikid on the
40-second
Junkrat.
infrasight on Widow.
Well, you get a headshot on the Mercy, which barely didn't kill him. Then you get EQO, who didn't make use of the fraggy jump in. So we talked about communication error. Looks like Fusion here is struggling a little bit with that. And let's be honest, Munchkin kept on doing serious work here.
The difference
through their
between the two
defense.
first point defenses, Munchkin goes down on the Widow, comes back on Tracer. As you pointed out, they did, when the Fusion did that, Carpe and the team, they did win that fight. That particular fight, they did win. But that was a key moment because he died on Widow, came back on Tracer, got both of the supports Lepelos. Both of them. So the Fusion who were left on point had no sustain. That staggered them because they couldn't go. They couldn't really disengage at that point. I guess they might have tried, but they stayed. Poco, I think it was Poco and Carpe were both still there trying to fight for the point. They got staggered. Fusion were then all out of sorts as everybody was coming off of respawn thinking, okay, we got this, we got this, we got this. They never really got it, Lepelos.
I mean, Rift Tire hitting Boombox, man, hard to get back when that's getting you partway there. Dynasty secure the full hold.
I have to say, Monty kind of annoyed me here. He kept trying to explain the Wikid over Fleta situation here by saying this is why they brought Wikid in because he's better at the quote unquote defensive Junkrat. One, that's bull. Okay, don't try to feed me. Someone's better at playing defensive Junkrat. What does that mean?
Oh, offensive Junkrat is better for Fleta.
Are you kidding me, man? Get out here with that crap. But two, this was Munchkin. This was Munchkin carrying like we've never seen Munchkin play before this season in the Overwatch League. He popped the hell off. And three, you know what else it was? Toby did not die on Mercy while playing defense.
Oh, there you
they
go.
got him low, but he did not die. He was always there for his revive every 30 seconds, always there with the sustain, and
yeah, you don't kill the Mercy,
Lepelos
you're not going to win
threw this
fights.
away. Threw this away.
Let's go ahead and move on to map 2, Blizzard World.
Defensive Junkrat. Are you kidding me, man?
The only thing I can defend that, Jax, is if he saw damage numbers and they were significantly high for him. I'm not.
So
he had a quick
Junkrat.
the first time. But
what is Jake? Is Jake an offensive Junkrat?
All around, the all American, all around Junkrat.
Okay.
That's
all American, all around. Fantastic. Map 2, Leplos. You take us to Blizzard World. Dynasty, being the away team, have to attack first.
Yeah, bringing Fleta in this time, as you might suspect. So not wanting that defensive Junkrat maybe for their defense. But let's go ahead and talk about this one. They start off, Dynasty start off their attack with the Widowmaker. And speaking of Junkrat, we had EQO again on that Junkrat, finding the tanks right off the start here.
Massive damage from EQO.
Yeah, this ends up being sort of the start of a failed attack here, let's be honest, for Dynasty. They're unable to really break in whatsoever.
Basically, Leplos, you just summed up my notes here. I start out with what the two teams started with. I have at 2:30 left on their attack. Fleta drops the Widowmaker for Pharah. He gets a little poke in here and there. Ultimately, nothing. Full hold. The Dynasty attack disjointed.
But can we also just mention how I know this is a full hold here. Every fight slightly edged on small details by the fusion, right? Like, just to bring up one, the support ultimates in about the third fight, Ryu Jaehong, his Transcendence forced early, that allowed fusion supports to come out later. That's an example one. The dive in the following fight landed a 2-to-1 trade for fusion, so a slight edge there. Fifth fight, Ryu Jaehong goes down because he's been going down early. He didn't have Transcendence ready. Goes down just before that Transcendence lands. Small edge there. In Fusion, with those small edges, able to eke out the full hold here on Blizzard World.
Let's go on the attack levels, and I don't know about you. I'm pretty much ready to jump to the last 10 seconds.
Let's go ahead and talk about last fight. 4 fights up until this point. This is the fifth fight.
It was almost as if I was watching the same thing. Exactly.
Absolutely.
We had the same switch by
EQO. Fleta attacking Junkrat out on defense. I know that's confusing, but we're using the terminology that they're doing, so let's do that too. But Carpe here, you're saying about Carpe.
No, I mean, at the last 10 seconds left, we get Carpe. He's flanking far right side. This is the second time that they've done that. Well, the first fight, Fusion went far right side, but at the very end there, Carpe flanking all the way down the far right side. To basically, he's coming from second point to first. He sneaks in. He gets the pulse bomb onto Toby, who literally at that exact moment that it stuck, pressed Q for his Valkyrie Leplos. Mercy down, Valkyrie gone, going into overtime. They don't have the sustain. The biggest difference here, right? The only reason I feel that the Dynasty lost this map was the focus here. Carpe in on Toby, Mercy gone. You had Munchkin. He also got a pick Leplos. He also got a pick at the same moment. He got Boombox on the Zen. What's the difference? Neptuno can revive Boombox. No one can revive Toby because he was playing the Mercy and he died. They go into the final fight without their main support. You don't have the sustain, and the Fusion take it.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, a whole map on edges, Jax, I think, on this one, and that's why you get this 1-0 here by the Fusion.
The other issue, and the casters pointed out, horrible Dragon Blades from EQO, which is something we're not used to. I think I posted on Discord as well a stat about somebody, the analysis guy. I need to remember his name, by the way. He does fantastic
Captain
threads.
Planet, I believe.
No, it's not Planet. It's some it's some other person. But basically it was showing the Genji play, and EQO gets so much from his blades historically, right? On average, he gets very productive Dragon Blades. He had nothing from his blades on Blizzard World. From all his blades on Anubis, he only had 2. He had 2 kills with Dragon Blade. So, EQO not really producing. However, the team as a whole and Carpe he got the stick. He won it with that stick. It's 1-1. We're on to map 3.
Yeah, map 3 being Nepal. We start off on Sanctum here. We have Dynasty going for the hard counter to what they expect will be a Junkrat composition with their Pharah Widow coming out here. Unfortunately, they do not find that Junkrat on the other side. Right. Instead, they do find point off of their composition, able to buy some room with it, but unfortunately, they're so easily dove upon, they lose the point immediately. From there, they find it very difficult to get in, as it is on Sanctum, and unfortunately having to switch after that first fight ultimately cost them here 118. going the way
I
of
mean,
Fusion.
to be fair, for the Dynasty, I didn't expect EQO to come out on the Widow myself, man. Like, I figured
Yeah,
if anybody's gonna play Widow, it'd be Carpe.
Carpe, and then what
Um,
you'd expect maybe a Genji or a Junkrat
yeah,
coming out of,
exactly. Did not
and
expect that. I mean, but see, what this goes back to what we were saying previously, or
I
what
like
I
the mind
like to
games.
say is, switch it when you're facing for me. You're facing the Korean teams, you got to go outside the box because they do their research, they do their homework. When you throw them something that they're not ready for, that pop quiz, and they don't respond, there you go.
I think
On the
this was
map,
a
two of the
100%
shrine.
one
Yeah,
that was the case. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Shrine. Shrine, a bit of a back and forth. Let's just cut down what happened here and mention that while it was a fairly strong round for the Fusion, they gave up a lot of free percentage here
they gave up a
in the
lot of
fight.
free percentage. One, they gave it's curious. It's the second fight in a row where they start out the fight by giving up the cap first, and then they like counter dive. Really, the Dynasty extends so far to try to get that first cap that they leave themselves vulnerable,
Yeah,
and Fusion punish it. But it's a free capture here for me. And let's just say Fusion won it 100 to 99. But Munchkin is putting in work. Munchkin is showing that he and in on this map here
on
is
this
like
map.
it's like he wants to be considered the number one DPS, and Fleta is secondary. But Munchkin, fantastic. He gets the pulse bomb onto Neptuno to trigger one to trigger overtime, and then two, kill the enemy Mercy going into overtime, which allows the team to sustain and take it back and go back and forth. And it was a good round for the Dynasty,
It
much better
was. It
than
was.
Sanctum, just not enough.
Uh,
I'm just serious. These two teams are playing so close here. It's just at any given moment, somebody can do one thing, and boom, your team has now won it.
yeah, that's true. I just also want to mention too. It would be interesting to see some stats that talk about. Obviously, Tracer always useful. I suspect here on Shrine,
One of
Tracer
the,
is a little more useful. Carpe also doing a good job
I was gonna
on
say
the
one of the
side
key
of Fusion.
stats that they highlighted Lepelos was Carpe and his Tracer play. He went 29-0 on Nepal.
Yeah, that is pretty gross strats. You're not going to win against Carpe doing that to your team.
I
Route
mean,
66, Jax, that's where we're going in because you have Snillo
you have
also
to be worried, right?
replacing
Route
EQ.
66, the Fusion are 7-3. They beat London in the semifinals of the Stage 2 playoffs. To make it through to the finals. They're coming in with Snillo, as you said, which is their key strat. But I take you before we get into it, levels. I take you back to what we were just saying. Everybody is expecting Snillo. So should they run it, or should they have done something different here?
I think,
If you're the
listen,
coaching staff, do you do something different here?
you have strongly executed Route 66 against top tier
Right.
teams. You go with what is the strong
In this
strategy for
instance,
you.
okay, no, fair enough, fair enough.
So,
It
like,
can go either way.
you don't have a weak strategy here. Like maybe if you had no, honestly, you go with this one here because even if you had another really strong strategy for Route 66, you save that one for a time that is more crucial for you. And I don't think this is a crucial game for them to to to
Playoff
reveal a new
stage
strat.
3 playoff implications. I forget where they are
Yeah,
in the standings at this moment, but
but you
I
still have
get what
stage
your I
four
get your
and
overall your point here, and it does make sense. The Dynasty are once again going on the attack first, Lepelos.
they find Poco early. He dies twice essentially because he gets the res, but dies again immediately after. Fusion taken out. It ends up being an easy A point capture
5 minutes
for.
and 10 seconds to push second. That's a beautiful time to give you that. Second is always it's long. There's multiple stalls, Lepelos,
Yeah,
and here I
incredible defense coming out of the Fusion. Let's say that they only get 57.82 meters, and that comes off of
they
their
didn't even
first.
make it around the corner.
That was the first attack. It got them to basically where the bridge is, the overhang was,
They
and
didn't get
from
under the
there
bridge and around the corner in 5 minutes.
they the cart made it all the way back to the tunnel entrance with the aggressive defense coming largely out of
If I
Snillo
were to
and
go to
Fraggy.
Route 66 right now, you know what I would see? I would see Snillo still in the back line waiting for them to come out. They never cleared him out back there, man.
The ghost that
Jae-Hong gets
haunts.
pressured, and when he gets low, you know what happens? Here comes Fraggy flying in from across the world on Winston with the 50k leap damage and the punch. And then multiple times, Jae-Hong down. Or then I see Toby down. And it's like, are they ever going to deal with this?
Yeah, this was beautiful play. The flanking maneuvers here done by the Fusion timed really well. They
I
had a
mean,
really good
because and
sense
then
of where to land them.
that leaves Carpe free on the bridge. It's like, hi, Carpe, Widow. I'm
Yeah,
just going to snipe
Rex
you.
Munchkin a couple of times in this. Not only in that last fight, but beyond that, he got him a couple of times,
Yeah.
including one where he got res right after, died again to Carpe. Carpe absolutely winning the Widow v Tracer, and Snillo winning the Tracer v backlines.
Everything.
Yep.
They just never dealt with the guy. So what was
Look,
that? You said 1 point in 57.82 meters is what they were held to. You have to, if you're a Dynasty fan, you are worried beyond belief because, as we said, the Fusion are really good at Route 66.
yeah, and honestly, full holding is about your best hope at this point. Fusion going on the attack, Widow's out again. Jaehong starts things off, though, getting Boombox. Dynasty finding that first hold. That's what you need to start things off. And honestly, from there, things continue to go their way. Jaehong having a heck of a round here on defense, I think, particularly helps Dynasty hold. Carpe going quiet, trading at best here in the third fight, for example, with Miro. Dynasty able to fully engage Fusion when they did push here and end up holding.
I don't understand. I don't understand the lack of adjustments by these two teams. For 5 minutes, the Dynasty ran into the brick wall that was Nilo camping them in the back line. They made no adjustments to their hero composition levels. Here, for 4 minutes, Fusion ran the same thing, expecting different results. Oh, if you're a Fusion, all you have to do, if you get the first point, odds are you will take the second point because that wasn't very far, and the Dynasty defense is not your defense. Carpe sat on the Widow and did nothing. Going into the final fight, you know what happened? It was just the little cherry on top. Snillo kills himself going into overtime, and then Fleta gets the pick onto Neptuno. The Mercy is down. He gets Carpe. The Widow is down, and it's like, in 4 minutes you couldn't. They don't have a plan B. This is supposed to be their map Leplos. This is their ace in the hole here.
Yeah,
they don't have a plan B.
They absolutely should have had the win right here. Instead, what they get is a trancing Jaehong with a pulse ball stuck on him, killing your Tracer in the final fight.
Fantastic. Absolutely. I mean, that was pro. Like, that is 9,000 IQ play by Jaehong.
Great defense. He was angry, I'm sure, after that attack that they had. Let's talk about Oasis, though. Last map here. Go through this one a little quickly. Starting off with City Center, we had Fled coming out on Farah, EQO back in on the McCree here. Bit of a messy fight in the end, but Fusion able to find supports when they needed to in order to take the first round.
Yeah, so, I mean, honestly, it was really, these two teams were close. Okay, if you put aside the Sanctum, the second map of the Shrine on Nepal, these two teams were very close, very back and forth. Here, you were seeing more of the same, very close, very back and forth. We are seeing Leplos, Jaehong on the Mercy, Toby playing the Lucio. They're going back to some of their old school, rules, at least with Toby playing Lucio. I was waiting to see if Jaehong would make Mercy mistakes. He didn't make them. Like in stage one, part of Soul's weakness was the Mercy play and the mistakes either him or Toby were making. It didn't happen, right? It didn't happen here, so Fusion couldn't capitalize on that. Well, they did, but still, they didn't lose the map because of Jaehong's Mercy. It was just the Fusion were there. The Fusion were ready. They're like, we're not going to lose this. We messed up on Route 66. We're not going to lose it. We're up one. It's now match point Lepolos going into the university stage. We've got 3-1-2. 3-1-2 for both sides now. You got EQO on the Roadhog, Carpe playing the Tracer for the Fusion. You've got Fleta on the Junkrat. I don't know. It's King of the Hill. There's no defensive Junkrat to be played here, Lepolos. But maybe that's why they have Fleta in, right? Because he's an offensive Junkrat.
Yeah, you're attacking. You're attacking the points. So you want that Fleta. Okay, Jax.
And then you have Munchkin playing the Zarya. So
can we mention
DPS for the 3-1-2 sandwich and different third tanks? You have Zarya for Dynasty and EQO for the Fusion.
Does not go the way of Fusion off the start, despite the damage.
Did you see how fast Fraggy got his Earth Shatter level?
It doesn't matter if you don't get the kills and/or the stun that sets you up kills. Neither of those things happening here. Dynasty hold on, forces the switch out of Fusion. I'm going to cut down everything, Jax, to this one.
That cost them the map. That fight cost them the map.
That cost them the map. But from there, they also lost when they did use Graviton Surge. They got no value out of it. And Dynasty, Graviton Surge worked out. That's why they have the 100-0 here. Let's move on to Gardens as we try and speed things up a little bit. Gardens coming out. We had the McCree come out this time from Fleta.
Yes.
And this time we
I
had
mean, this is like the
EQO.
reverse of what we saw on the city, where EQO was McCree and Fleta was Farah. Now you have EQO is Farah and Fleta is now McCree. So
And McCree
who
ends up
knows?
winning again off the duel. That forces EQO to switch here to McCree, and now you're already behind. Fusion struggling to find entry without taking damage. Costs them one fight. They're able to get point here for a little bit. And that came off the back of ultimates. Thankfully, the cost, or both teams using ultimates in that fight, gave Fusion opportunity here, maybe to get it up to 99 themselves. But Boombox being caught early, not what you want to have happen to your Zen, because that allowed Dynasty to push hard, and they did push hard
That
here.
left Boombox was died, and then Neptuno went in to get him up. That he got him up. It cost him his life. So you don't have your mercy. You have a Zen, but Zen doesn't really heal. He does damage. He doesn't really heal very much. At least not without transcendence. He didn't have transcendence. And as a result, it kind of cost him the match, Lepelos.
It did. Dynasty able to retake the point here and ends up with 2-1 map victory on Oasis, which gives them the 3-2 victory overall against Fusion.
This was odd for me. I get after the first fight, I get EQO switching from Farah to McCree. What I don't understand is okay, I do get it. Boombox dropped. He went from Mora to Zen at the same time. So you had Farah going to McCree. You had your Mora going to Zen. He had 85% to his Coalescence. Coalescence, not. I mean, it's a good ult. You know, it's not a game changing ult. But I would go back to what you said about them trouble. They have Fusion having trouble getting in healthy, right? They struggle to get into the point, and it's like Coalescence gives you the little bit more sustain that you need to get in there. And it's similar to what happened on the university stage. They lost the first fight, and then they made wholesale changes, reset their ult economy, like Monty pointed out. And it happens here again. It takes time to build up your ultimates. So they got it right. They, unlike the university stage, they were able to flip it here. They flipped it with 85% left.
Yeah, pretty high in percentage.
It's almost over. That's one fight, and Fleta and Munchkin are getting more done. Right? If you stop and you think about it, or maybe if you have notes, you might have notes for Fleta, you have notes for Munchkin, you have notes for Carpe. Where's EQO going, Lepelos?
I honestly
You talk about him
do
making the
not
switch
like
from
the
Farah
switch
to McCree. What did he do? Where is he?
I agree. I do not like the switch to McCree here, because I don't think the McCree to McCree mirror matchup favored EQO here, and he should have known that.
I mean, technically, mechanically, he's not. I'm sorry. His McCree was okay in previously, but Fleta is the better one. Now, I get it. You can't not play a hero because someone else is better at it. I just feel like I might have preferred him to go Genji
Or
over.
honestly, considering how much we know they struggle with it, you go Junkrat versus Dynasty. That's what I would have said. But anyways, Jax, let's go ahead and
Junkrat can work on the guard, and there are a lot of angles for you to bounce off of. I mean,
I'm just saying that's what I would have told my team.
Poor
Anyways,
execution by the Fusion here.
yeah, they dropped the ball. They had the win in their sights here. They ended up losing out. Let's move on to day 3, though, Jax, and losing. Of course, we had the Fuel versus Boston, and it was Fuel losing out here with a 4-0 victory, not even getting the point on Anubis A or a round on Ilios. So 2 goose eggs on the board for Dallas, as another winless week for them. Jack's second game of the day was Gladiators versus Houston.
Fields up, Lepelos.
And this time you got me picking Houston against Gladiators. It was a close
mistakes. You've made a mistake there, Lepelos.
You say I made a mistake. This one's still on a hair's breadth away from going Houston's way. I mean, let's talk about it. 4-3 Volskaya, 3-2 Nambani, looking great for Gladiators. Jax almost getting reverse swept again. 2-1 Ilios, 2-1 Route 66, and an Oasis that goes 2-1 for Gladiators here in a close game 5 yet again. Okay, last match was not close.
I take you back to what I said, and it's something that over the course of this stage, basically, is close out and just killer instinct from the Los Angeles Gladiators. Lepelos. They take the first 2 maps, then they go to Ilios. They take the first map of Ilios 100-0. So
Oasis.
Ilios, third map.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. 100-0, and then they lose the second map 199, and then they lose the third map 100-0, and I'm like, here we go again. Except it's Route 66, and the Houston Outlaws are terrible at Route 66.
And they don't even capture a second point on Route 66,
No.
Jax. Horrible play
However,
out of them.
it's just Asher
Do you feel
disappears.
comfortable with the wins? That's what I'm asking you at this point. You had 2 wins
No,
this week against
no, no.
good teams.
I even said on the Discord, as a Gladiator fan, I'm glad they won. I'm upset at how they won. Because unlike the Excelsior, who lately have had a lot of game fives, but a lot of that is because they're running Janus and the Janus experiment. And when Mano comes in, like, okay, we're done messing around, we're gonna beat you, which is what they do. They did it to the Gladiators actually, last week. Here, it's not that. It's just the Gladiators take their foot off the gas. They're like, okay, we got up 2-0. We're in a good spot. We're just going to chill a bit, see how things work out. And if necessary, we'll turn it back on again for game 5 and we'll take it. Didn't work against the Excelsior. Damn near didn't work here against the Houston Outlaws Lepelos. If they want this stage 4 playoff spot, they've got to fight for it and act like they want it. Kill these teams when you have them down. Don't leave them with any breath to fight back with.
I absolutely agree with you.
We'll
Closing out, Jax. Closing out the day, though, we had Valiant versus the Mayhem. Not a big surprise, again, as Valiant take this one 3-1, dropping only Ilios as 2-1 for Mayhem there. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry. You were going to Volskaya was what 2-1 Valiant, Nambani 3-1 Valiant, Ilios 2-1 Florida. And let's talk about Junkertown because the clip is going around Lepelos. The clip might be clip of the year here, and it's not the big boss man Pine on Widow. It's Saya player on Widow who kills 4 players in the 3rd stage of Junkertown. And yet, you know what happens when I look at this map score for Junkertown? Valiant 3, Florida 2.
It's telling. Even when they have small victories, Jax, Florida not
trash, man. Where did Tavika? I watched this, and I don't really watch the Florida Mayhem play because this is why I don't watch the Florida Mayhem play because they're trash, dude. Holy crap!
Frustrating.
He popped off like that, and the team crumbles. He has to kill all 6, man? Is that what he has to do?
It's almost more frustrating than being a Shanghai Dragons fan because you feel like they have potential. They just, I mean, okay, Shanghai Dragons, sure, they have potential. Florida, they execute sometimes and then they drop the ball. That's what's happening with them. Jax, let's move on. Day 4, Shock versus Spitfire. Round 2 for the Shock to prove themselves, and it goes worse for them this time around. Volskaya Industries 2-1 Spitfire, Bonnie 1-0, Ilios 2-0, and Route 66 2-1. That's 2 goose eggs. Listen, if I knew binary, a 1001 code would be something like 17. I listen. Someone can correct me on that one, but here, no, that would be 9, wouldn't it? Jax.
Lepelos, what it is me being glad I'm not a San Francisco Shock fan because this was supposed to be the stage where they've got all the players now, right? They've got 150K, they've got Super, they've got Architect, they've got Choyo Bin, although we haven't seen him yet, they've got him. And yet this is still the same San Francisco Shock from stage 1 when they ran Nomi, Lepelos. This is garbage here. Sinatra, the man is overpaid unless, perhaps he was sick and had a bad wrist and they just haven't reported it. But he didn't get very much done playing DPS. No one on this team got very much. The Architect had his moments like Architect always has his moments. But the team overall, this is a massive disappointment if you're a San Francisco Shock fan, Lepelos. They are still fighting for that 4th playoff spot. They can't afford to drop these games. Sure, they had New York. You say, okay, well, they lost to New York. Fine. What do we say? You prepare. If you have a rough week, pick one, prepare for it, execute on that day, and get your win. If this was the game they prepared for, Lepelos, holy hell, man.
Yeah, they're definitely a disappointing week for them. Jax, let's talk about the next one. We had the Dynasty taking on New York Excelsior here. Also, actually, before we do, can I just mention you did pick Shock over Spitfire, and I understand it's Spitfire been struggling.
Woke, dude. I thought they were woke, but in fact, they are sleepy.
They are sleeping. Also sleeping though, the Dynasty, they needed some rest after their hard-fought win here against New York Excelsior.
You prepare for one game, right? They had a rough week. They prepared for one against the Fusion. They got their win barely. It was given to them, and then here they're like, okay, it's New York.
Yeah.
We're just We're
We're
done.
going. We're going to fall asleep as the game goes on. In fact, you look at the scorelines: 3-2 Volskaya, 3-2 Numbani, Ilios 2-1, Route 66 1-0. That's all New York Excelsior wins there for the 4-0 over Seoul Dynasty here. Seoul Dynasty slowly falling asleep throughout the game because they were exhausted, I think, from their earlier
This was
runs in the league,
interesting. We had Pine on 3 of the 4 maps for
including
the
coming out
Excelsior.
off the
Yeah.
start. It's rare to
Normally,
see them
you know,
start.
we don't normally see Pine this much, and it's got me wondering, what they're working with over there. We had Mano start. Normally, the last couple weeks, and even the first game of this week, we had Janus getting the start out. Here, we had Mano get the first game, and then Janus, and then Mano, and then Mano played 3, and Janus only played 1. But you know how we were talking earlier on, and we're saying perhaps they're just doing it one position at a time compared to, say, London, who does 2 or 3 at a time. Leplos here, Pine was the one who got more play, right? So I get the feeling that New York is just it's like exercise.
Yeah,
They know they're comfortable with their position in the overall standings for end of season playoffs. And while they are fighting for that first place in stage 4, sorry, stage 3, I apologize. They're still experimenting, and I'm liking how they're doing this. They're getting all their players that, like, even Animal and Arc, right? They make small changes, Lepelos. One map here, one map there, one player here, one player there.
speaking
It
of
works.
changes, Jax, we had Shanghai Dragons versus Philadelphia Fusion. Your guy Sky getting some more playtime these days. It doesn't start off well here for Anubis. They're unable to prevent Philadelphia from getting what they need on second point attack, dropping that map to the Fusion 2-1. But Blizzard World comes out, Jax, and Fusion look like they're dropping the ball yet again. This time, though, 4-3 for the Dragons as they were able to cap out fully with a minute 38 on the clock. Fusion only able to capture out in OT. That was an incredible round coming out of the Shanghai Dragons there. Nepal, another close one. Fusion taking this one 2-1. And Jack's a full hold by Dragons on Junkertown to win that one 3-0. Forces a game 5. I don't think.
Got this. The spirits are high, man. They played so strong on Junkertown and Lepelos. But I know we kind of jumped over it. Nepal was their map, man. You take a look at it: 100 to 93 Fusion, 100 to 43 Dragons, and then 100 to 99 Fusion. That first map on the Sanctum, that was
Could have
it
been
with the
theirs.
Sanctum first or last? I don't know. Whatever the Sanctum map was, this never mind. We're gonna go to the fifth map, Oasis, and then we're gonna come back to here. This
Okay,
this
Oasis.
Nepal that's rough.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to that. Honestly, it sort of does because Oasis goes 2-0 the side of Philadelphia Fusion here.
Lepelos. Look
Let's
at
go ahead.
look at the percentages here, man. 100-0, 100-0.
Yeah, strong victory. It's clearly clear. I don't think they practiced Oasis
Like
significantly.
Reinforce said, because I believe it was Reinforce on the desk. They have no listen. They don't really have a reason to practice. I'm being honest here. He was being honest.
Yeah,
They don't have a
and I
reason
have
to
to agree
practice
with it.
Oasis Leplos.
Yeah, they
They
don't.
practice the 4 maps that they know for sure they're going to play on because Oasis is a pipe dream. And it was so close on Nepal. Like, you and we actually had a brief conversation earlier before we did our VOD review where we said, I asked Lepelos, Dynasty Fusion or Dragons Fusion for our full coverage game of the week. And we said we'll give it to Shanghai when they win the game.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, until that point, you can't give it to them. This one was
Lepelos,
close,
this was so close, man. It
but
was
they're
it was
not
it was little
closing
it was
out.
those little moments that win games, and the Dragons just don't get enough of them to go in their favor, specifically on Nepal. That was their map, that was their win, Lepelos, and that was their series. Oh, so close. I feel as bad as it is to be a Shock fan, it's brutal to be a Dragons fan, man. But they're improving. Not quite there. Not quite there. And why did they bench Sky and put in Free Fill for the last 4 maps? Gonna let that go. Just gonna put that aside. Just
Yeah,
gonna
I mean,
maybe
Sky's looking pretty
why did
good.
they bench him, dude?
I'm not sure. I think a lot of this, obviously internal stuff and what
Yeah.
they're practicing. That's probably what it comes down to. Maybe better luck for them coming in the coming weeks or next week, I guess, and then
It was
stage 4.
there, man. It was there.
Can we just also
Shanghai.
mention Fusion playing down to their opponents?
Again,
So
that's
yet again,
this team.
Watch
If I
out,
was a
they're
Fusion
volatile.
fan, as a Gladiator fan, I kind of feel like a Fusion fan at times. But when I look at the results, these games shouldn't be this close. The Fusion let's be honest, Lepelos. They should have gone 2-0 this week. They should not have lost to the Dynasty. That Anubis attack was terrible. The closeout on Route 66, which is their map, was also terrible. They play to the level of their opponents, and when their opponents take it a step up during the game and they don't match that, they're done. And
yeah, I'm very volatile, Jax. Like they can explode and beat the best
Boston,
teams.
like I feel like Boston and Philly, but then I feel like Boston and Philly are close. It's just if you ask, what's the difference then? What's the difference, Jack, between Boston and Philly? Consistency.
Yeah.
Boston, same every game. The coaching staff has them working like a machine. You know what you're going to get, and they output it every game.
Absolutely, I like
Fusion,
their attitude a lot
maybe Coach Heidi too much carbs. Like I forget what is she
Chef
feeding
Heidi.
them for this? I don't know. You know.
Yeah, do
But
they have to
is
look
it
at
the
their diet
diet?
more?
Like
No, I don't think that's the case. I think they have to work on their attitude about closing. Like if you mentioned Gladiators and closing, you have to mention the same there with. And which is crazy because if you go look at the start of the game, they sort of maybe had a little bit of BM there too, Jax.
they did, very much.
Right?
Yeah.
So no love lost here between the two teams, and they let them in it. And that's not what you want to see if you're a Fusion fan, Jax. We're moving on though to discuss the rundown of particularly Contenders action going on because I believe that's all we have on the list this time around. Starting off with Overwatch Contenders in South America, where
I will say Europe and North America are playing at a LAN in Poland in a week and a half.
Yeah.
So we don't have any action from those regions. So we jump
Korea
right
region
to.
Is...
Yeah, they're also they gotta give us 2 weeks between, so you can forget everybody who played in the semifinals, except for South America, Lepelos, because you and I took a look at the South American semifinals yesterday. I guess I should have put it on the playoff tab when I linked it, but we had Brazil game. Wait, when did the quarterfinals start? Yeah, so we're starting with the semifinals of South America.
Yes,
Brazil Gaming House versus Nocturnes Gaming.
Not a big surprise there. Brazil Gaming House 3-1 over Nocturnes. Other side of the bracket, we had Isurus 3-0 over Pain.
That
might
have been
a bit
let down
of a
by that one. I
right?
expected so much more out of Pain. They had one of my favorite South
map.
American players. They have Muriz, the flex player, and he flexed himself right to the exit.
Yeah, there's not much else to say about that. It was 2-1 Oasis, 3-1 Nambani, 2-1 Hanamura. Those
and
are
then Lepelos,
solid.
instead of 2 weeks in between the semifinals and the grand final, the very next day we go from semifinals to grand finals of South American Contenders. This is how it should be done.
Yep,
Brazil
some
Gaming
good passion
House
coming out of the
Isurus Gaming,
too.
best of 7, not 5, but 7. Lepelos, take us through it.
Yeah, Brazil Gaming House starting out strong. Oasis going immediately their way with a 2-0. Nambani brought back to a 1-1 score line as Isurus Gaming winning Nambani with a 3-2, able to match the distance put out there by Brazil Gaming House. Horizon Lunar Colony going the side of Brazil Gaming House 3-2 as Isurus Gaming's attack a little bit flat on that one. Junkertown going the side of Brazil Gaming House 3-2, able to shut down the attack of Isurus Gaming. And Nepal, strong play coming out of Brazil Gaming House, including your boy Alamo dropping a Convalescence. I mean, I'm not sure if you caught that moment. I certainly did. Able to close out with that there on Village for the 2-0 victory on that round or on that map, and the 4-1 victory over Isurus Gaming to win it all.
Gotta feel bad for Isurus, Lepelos. Out of Contenders and looking, I think we had the top 20 teams, nations, nationwide, the top 20 nations who will be in the Overwatch World Cup, and Argentina not on the list.
Yeah, that's definitely difficult.
Brazil barely making it in at 20.
Barely, yeah. It's definitely hard for those countries to try and get in and compete, and sad to see that we're not going to see Klaus and the Isurus Gaming folk able to make it.
This result,
Israel also not going, so EKO not participating in the World Cup either.
I mean, same with Belgium. Spree and who was the other player for Belgium?
It wasn't Logix, was it?
Yes, it was Logix.
Okay.
Also not going to make it.
Let's go ahead and talk about other contenders, though, Jax.
A bit let down by South America.
I
I
mean,
was
it's got to
hoping
be
for I was
disappointing
hoping
for
for
the region.
competition here, and it was 4-1 in the
Still,
grand finals, and the semifinals weren't competitive either. Lepelos, why?
yeah, that sometimes happens in sports. Let's move over to the Australia region, Jax, where we've moved
Oh
through the
boy.
quarterfinals. No big surprises here. Darksided 3-0 over Knock Printers. Sydney Drop Bears 3-0 over Legacy Esports. In the top bracket, bottom bracket, Masterminds dropping a map to Kanga Esports, but still getting through with a 3-1. Blank Blue 3 over Just a Minute Gaming. We have our semifinals set up. Those are not listed in terms of when they're taking place, so we'll have our eyes out for that.
I
Let's
mean,
move over though.
I kind of feel like for Australia, we're not going to get anything until the finals. Where hopefully we'll get Masterminds who went 19-0 versus Darksided who went 18-2. These are map lines
Yeah,
for people
so
who are unaware. We probably won't get that. When are these games?
we don't know.
See,
We're
how am
gonna
I
keep our
supposed to
eyes
get
on
into
that.
this, man? If I don't, how am I supposed to get into this if I don't even know when the games are played?
Speaking of not knowing when the games are played, let's go ahead and talk about the Pacific region where we do know when the games are being played. We're also through the quarterfinals in the playoffs there.
Okay.
Again, no surprises as we had Detonator Korea 3-0 over A-Bang. Mega Esports 3-1 over Machi Esport in the upper bracket. Lower bracket, Blank Esports 3-0 over Talent Esports. Hong Kong Attitude 3-0 over
These scores,
Xavier
these games are boring,
Esports.
Lepelos.
It might be
This
the
is
same way
quarterfinals
here.
playoffs, man. Where's the interesting games?
I
If you
mean,
go back to the quarterfinals for Korea, we had some damn interesting games.
well,
Lepelos.
very interesting storylines there. I'm not sure we'll see any interesting things. Semifinals in the
Okay.
Pacific region taking place in 3 days from this podcast. That's May 3rd. And the finals are taking place in 5 days, which is on May 5th. Let's
So
go
basically, we're waiting for Detonator versus Blank. 18-2 for Detonator.
So 5 days.
17-3 for Blank. We'll see. Is Blank finally going to win international competition?
I'm guessing not. That Detonator Korea team looking pretty strong.
Oof.
Jax, let's be honest. It's gonna. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. We're gonna have to see.
Blast Wolf's gone, right? Ardian gone. This is the time for Blank.
See if they can do it. All right, Jax, let's go ahead and discuss the final region of the rundown. That is China, where we had Lucky Future Zenith taking on Lucky Future, and Lucky Future Zenith winning.
That's cheating. We went over this.
Over 3-0. Bit of an upset. Team Scottish Gift dropping out here to T1W Esports, who won 3-0, Jax. 3-0 over Team Scottish Gift. Yeah, that's a bit of an upset here. No upset on the lower bracket where you had Team CC take on LYB. That's Legend Young Beyond in a 3-0 victory, and LGD Gaming winning over Ligan Esports 3-0 on to round out the bottom bracket. That's the end of the rundown there, Jax. Let's go ahead and talk about predictions.
Looking at this, wait a minute. When do we get the finals for China?
China is May 13th. 2 weeks almost.
Come on, dude. I'm looking forward to Lucky Future Zenith, which is already at Lepelos versus LGD Gaming. My boy Eileen. People are asleep. Hopefully he'll be 18, and then he can go to Shanghai and hopefully replace Dia, because Dia's the reason why they lost. But you were taking us back to the Overwatch League. Is that correct?
Indeed. We're coming up to week 5, so I'm gonna go ahead.
It's last week, Lepelos.
We are going to
are we doing the split again?
What's that?
Split episodes. Are we gonna do split episodes again?
I think so, or we can try and keep it short. Today again, we tried to keep it short.
We're very short, Levels.
We're short. I'm trying to do my best.
We actually, for those who are not aware, Levelos and I, we said 60 minutes before we wanted to be done with Overwatch League going into the rundown. It was, I think, 61 minutes, which is fantastic for us. And now we're going into our predictions.
But let's go ahead.
And no clocks either. Look at Toshi like fired as our clock.
We don't even need a clock man right now. That's how good we're doing. But let's go ahead and talk about the Overwatch League stage or week 5. Stage 4.
I'm looking at this right now. I'm looking at the standings for Stage 3 going into Week 5. Is this... What? 2 slots have already been confirmed. Boston and New York have confirmed spots for the playoffs. That means there's 2 left, but there's still, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... Still 7 teams?
Definitely makes it more interesting, man.
Last 2 spots?
Definitely very interesting potential here. I mean, I like the change. I like the change to 4 teams because it provides a lot more interesting jockeying for position within a stage, which is some of that drama that you need for this kind of stuff to happen. Unfortunately, we do not start out with drama here, Jax. We have the Fusion versus Fuel on day 1, game 1. and I think we can both safely predict.
Does Dallas play spoiler, Leplos? Does Fusion are one of the teams fighting for that last playoff spot? Cannot afford to lose this.
No, I feel like Fuel will have no effect here on. Sorry, that's affect on the Fusion's chances.
I agree.
Okay, let's go talk about game 2 here. Again, a sleeper. We have the Mayhem taking on.
I mean, here's the deal. Florida, if they figure out how to do something, like just give Saya player a little help, they could play spoiler because the Gladiators should absolutely stomp this team 4-0.
You say that, but I mean, people have been saying Surefour best Widowmaker Overwatch League. Maybe Saya player is going to run into that.
I am looking forward to it.
Are you? You're looking forward to a Florida
just
game?
Because I'm looking forward because I'm hoping the Gladiators will wait. Look, if the Gladiators win their games, they're in the playoffs. That's it. Just it's the same thing as the previous stage. If the Gladiators win their game in the last week, they're in the playoffs. It's in this as you want it to be in your own hands. Your fate resides with you, Gladiators, to see what they got.
I think they have it here over Florida Mayhem for sure. In game 2 of day 1 takes us on to game 3, which is actually a bit of an interesting one too. A very big game where we have two teams that are both trying to get as many wins. They need help, and they both need wins. That we're talking, of course, against the Shock and the. Oh, sorry, let me do this in correct order. The Houston Outlaws and the Shock are playing. Both of them need wins here, as they're both 4-4 teams.
If the Shock had showed me anything last week, Lepelos, I would pick them. Because this map, there's no junker down here. Volskaya, Nambani, Nepal, Route 66. These are not maps I favor the Houston Outlaws. I take Houston. I'm sorry. The Shock showed me nothing last week. If they had showed me anything, I would pick them over Houston because of this map pool. But I can't. I cannot. Because I like consistency, and the Shock have showed me they're consistently inconsistent. I can't pick them. I can't.
Jax, I'm going to actually shock you with this
one.
I
know. I would like to. I can't do it.
I'm actually going with them because I do not think Outlaws are going to come out of the gates very well here, as they have shown to do in the past.
I agree. It's just I can't do it. I can't do it.
Let's go ahead and move into day 2, where I might shock you again by not picking the San Francisco Shock.
Why are they back to back? Lepelos, there's 4 days of games this week.
We're talking here.
Why are they playing on the first
quickly.
2 days?
Shock. Let me just get this in quickly. Shock versus Mayhem, day 2, game 1, back-to-back games. And can we also mention?
Why are both teams playing back-to-back?
Can we mention the overlap of maps here being restricted to the last 2 maps, which are Nepal and Route 66?
That's better than what it normally is. Normally, you get nothing, man. But either way, I still take San Francisco because Florida is even worse than. I'm sorry, Florida. I know. Did you see what Saya player did, and they still lost? Like if he has to kill 6 people to win for that team, no, that's ridiculous. Get out of here.
So I am actually going with the Mayhem on this one because of. One of 2 things are going to happen. They're either going to win on day 1 and then drop the ball here completely, because it's a hard thing to play 2 maps in a row. Listen, Florida wants to play spoilers here, and if they don't get it against Gladiators, they're going to get it against Shock.
This is going to be big on the 2 new Korean players for both teams. You got Architect and Saya player. Temple Anubis, that first point, you're going to get your Widow Lepelos. Blizzard World, more Widow. Nepal, not so much Widow, but then Route 66, you're back on Widow. We'll see. We'll see how they both stack up, but I'm going with San Francisco because Florida is, Florida. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you, but I just do feel like... even though both teams here are playing the day before, both Florida and Shock are playing the day before here.
Right.
I do feel like the Mayhem will have enough against the Shock, and Shock have shown even more. Listen, Mayhem, not inconsistent; they're just consistently bad. Shock inconsistently. I think they can drop easily a series here against the Mayhem.
Massive concerns if I'm management and coaching staff for San Francisco if they lose to Florida. Massive. Huge concerns because Florida only beat Shanghai. That takes us, though, Lepelos, into our second game of day 2 of week 5 of stage 3. just the Boston Uprising versus the Los Angeles Valiant, and I of course have to go with Boston because I like consistency.
I have to agree with you. I mean, as much as I enjoy seeing he's been up and down and out of the matches too, bringing KSF does not improve the Valiant team on that Blizzard World Attack. I don't like to see things like that so early off in maps.
Okay, tell me this website is bugged and we don't even. Sorry, I was looking ahead to the next day. We have more Nepal and Route 66. So much Nepal and Route 66 this week. Holy crap.
Talk about more burnout. And speaking of burnout,
God.
Jack's third game of day 2. Okay, just for the record, again, we're both going Uprising
Boston.
game 2.
Yeah.
Third
you have
game,
to ask
though,
for this next one.
it's a burnout. It's Fuel versus NYXL.
Okay,
come on.
over
Is
under Janice playing 2 games here. More or less than 2 games for Janice against.
He's going to get 2 games. I don't think he gets more. I would be surprised. So
okay,
I'm going with 2 games, not more. How about you? Like, what do you think? He's going to get more?
3. Yeah, I think they might give Mano 1 game just to keep him fresh, and the rest of it they'll keep running their experiment because it's Dallas Fuel and Dallas Fuel are terrible.
So
then Lepelos, we go into day 3, game 1. Shields up. Oh, Lepelos, the sirens.
Yeah,
are
sirens are coming by. Listen, guys, this is not part of the soundboard.
The shield is going to break, man. They're already sending the ambulance to help them.
Concerns.
My goodness.
Wow.
Fisher down. Someone save him. I would like to pick my Gladiators. You know what, Lepelos? I'm going with a hard pick. You're going to take Boston. I'm going to take the Gladiators just because they're my team and because I have to support them. We're going with the Gladiators over here.
I sort of, this is going to be a hard one because obviously Gladiators, I think, always keep things close.
I mean, Boston does have something to play for. They want that first spot where you can pick your opponent.
Yeah, Boston definitely can easily drop games, and the pressure might have built up by now that it might be getting.
I mean, look at it for New York. Who does New York play in the final week, Lepelos? Dallas and Shanghai. Okay, so you kind of expect them to win those 2 games, and if Boston wants to keep their first spot, they'll have. I mean, because as of right now, even though Boston is in first place, the New York Excelsior have the better map differential, +16 to +15. And as I said, the Excelsior are playing the Fuel and the Dragons. It could very easily be another +8 for them. Boston cannot lose if they want to hold that first place. They can't lose. That doesn't mean I'm going to pick them. I'm still picking the Gladiators because Shield's up, but I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, so I am going with Boston here, and you are going with Gladiators. I'm not being surprised there. I do think consistency of particularly striker here going to cause issues for that Gladiators team. Let's move on.
I'm sure for again. Can he hang with mistakes? Actually, at this point, I would say can mistakes hang with sure for?
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. But the question is, can they deal with?
Is Ashy Striker, who I love for being consistent, versus Asher, who was up and down and all around this stage? I don't know what to get. I don't know what to expect from him. I really don't. But that being said, Lepelos, our next game, New York Excelsior versus Shanghai Dragons.
It's another sleeper here this week.
You and I both picked the Excelsior. Does Shanghai take a map? Route 66, believe it or not, is one of the better maps for the Shanghai Dragons.
I don't think they're going to take a map. I
don't think so.
Okay. But we have to go with the over-under question, Jack. So I'm adding this into our predictions. Janice, 3 games, 2 games. What do you see here?
2, because Shanghai is going to impress and put the pressure on Lepelos.
Listen, I'm going with 2, but only because I think that's what they practice for. So we are both going for 2 games on the over/under of Janice on that one. All right, we have an interesting one though coming up in day 3, game 3, where it's Spitfire taking on Seoul. Now,
but when this game is actually played, both these teams might be out of playoff contention. But as of right now, they have a chance. They need help, like so many other teams do. And I can't believe we're saying this, but London and Seoul both on the outside looking in for stage 3 playoffs. Did not expect this. Did not. You couldn't have expected this. Maybe Seoul, because the coaching staff there, they're in California now. Weed is legal, Lepelos. Maybe they've been partaking.
Yeah, who knows why they've been so lethargic. I feel like they will be lethargic against Spitfire too, speaking of Dynasty particularly, and that Spitfire will have the edge here to take this series.
I'm taking Spitfire as well because London came out strong against the Shock.
Absolutely.
They played very well against the Shock, and
it's like they needed some time to reorient themselves, and they're like still not 100%, but they're showing up. They come out again first thing the next day though, Jack. Spitfire.
I will say this though, man. If Munchkin And again, he's not been consistent. If Munchkin plays at the level he did against Philly, we'll see. But yeah, taking London here, taking London in the next game
as well. This, of course, Dragons versus Spitfire first thing the next day. I can't pick Dragons
again.
until
Why? I picked the Dragons to win a map, but London to win the series. However, there's a good chance London might just completely lose the plot, Lepelos, and throw it. But that's a very outside chance. I'll
that's
take
less of a
3-1
chance
London.
than Fusion doing
Yeah.
that the next time they play Dragons. Let's talk about game 2 of day 4. We had Dynasty taking on the Outlaws here. I have to say Outlaws has Dynasty's number, man. Like, Dynasty don't know how to deal with unique composition. I believe Outlaws runs enough unique stuff.
I don't think so. I don't. It's Jake, dude. I mean, unique. What is unique about Jake? He's only plays Junkrat at a high level. That's the only unique thing about the man.
You don't know how they're going to play Tracer or if they're going to play Tracer.
Listen, if it wasn't,
you don't know if Factor Fiction is going to be playing or if they're going to play Muma.
If the reason
Jax,
why I can't do that, Lepelos,
maybe
is
Arhan's going to even play.
Arhan, I saw a tweet from him. He was on the plane. He probably has arrived by now.
They probably will play him. If they're out by this point, they will probably play him against Dynasty.
Lepelos. If
I'm
they
telling
play Arhan before Mindo Kusai, I am done with this team. Okay? I am done. Coach Kai, see, I just remember Coach Kai has been seen in and around the Houston Outlaws. So who knows what could happen. But if Arhan is played before Mindo Kusai, done with this team. That being said, I'm picking Seoul because of the map pool here. Previously, last week, when you pointed out that I picked Houston over the Valiant, it was because of the maps, right? They had Jake-friendly maps. Anubis, Junkertown. Those are Jake maps. Here, Lepelos, Temple of Anubis, yes, but then Seoul is going to come out with their own Junkrat. They're going to play the defensive Junkrat of Wikid to counter Jake's offensive Junkrat. You see? So he'll be negated right there. And
yeah, I didn't think about that.
Kind of a widow fight, but still, with Jake unable to do his thing because of Wikid's defensive Junkrat play, I'm taking Seoul. Nambani, Nepal. The problem is Route 66.
I mean, can we also mention, though, Jax, that there's a high variability to this one because if both teams are out, or even if one team is out, this game may end up having a bit of weirdness played out in it, right? They might try strategies or just throw things or players that don't usually get games played. And honestly, I would do that if I was one of these two teams and wanted to get new players in. Maybe not as new as Arhan, but maybe somebody like Mendo Kusai in there. Okay, Jax, let's go ahead and discuss.
I would normally agree with that, except putting stage 3 aside, you have to look at the overall standings. They're not safe, man. Seoul is currently 4th in overall standings, but they're at 18 and 10, 17 and 11, 17 and 11, 16 and 12. They can't afford to lose.
Yeah,
they can't afford to lose, man.
Well, Dynasty already does a good job of mixing a roster. Houston does a pretty good job of it too. But sometimes
we'll see.
You're going into a break. Both of these teams, I suspect, will be out of the playoffs, and I think this moment would be good for them to have a moment in game on stage where they're trying some different things outside of their comfort zone, because that is a part of competition as well.
All right, you take Houston, I take Dynasty. We're into the last game, Lepelos, Valiant versus Fusion. We have honestly at this point I have no idea what the playoff picture will look like. As of right now, the Valiant are in and Fusion is knocking on the door.
I think listen, Fusion has a habit of playing to their opponents, and they've been on the downward side of things over the last little bit because of it. They need some time to bounce back. And I don't think their game against Dallas will be enough for that. Looking at the maps here, let's talk about them. Volskaya Industries, Nimbani, Nepal, Route 66. You feel like Route 66 should be an advantage for
Here's
Fusion.
The deal, Lepelos.
I still think it will be.
I'm looking at this right now, and I said we don't know what the playoff picture will look like. But let's just think about what we have right now. Philly plays Dallas. That should be a win, okay? So that puts them up 1. Valiant in their first game of the week play Boston. Boston, who does have something to play for. I think we both picked Boston over the Valiant. So that means the Valiant are now 1 game lower. That means that as of this point here, the Valiant, the Gladiators, and the Fusion going into this final day, or as of here, they will all be in and around, probably have the same record. We'll probably all have the same record. I think the last playoff spot will literally come down to Valiant versus Fusion.
I
I
don't think that's the case, because if you look at the map score line here, okay, so Fusion, even if they win both their
think
games, right? Even if they win both their games and Valiant lose both of their games, Fusion and Valiant, the
God,
best they can
plus
do is
13.
6 and 4.
I wasn't even looking at that. Holy
Map
crap!
scoreline
Oh
and
my
map
God.
differential is hugely different for these two teams, and there's no way for Fusion to
Quick
make that up.
timeout then. Quick timeout. Do you think head-to-head should take precedence over maps?
I don't. I go with
You
maps all
don't?
the time. Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh,
Not over head to head.
I'm more a fan over head-to-head, dude. Like
But maps are like overall
maps are consistency.
importance. Yeah.
Head-to-head is
I can beat this one
a
team.
snapshot.
Yeah, which I don't think
Ugh.
is the fair way to do when you talk about overall
Okay.
league standings.
Well, in that case, either. Whew. But that the gladiators could theoretically lose though. Okay. Either way, do you take Valiant or Fusion?
I think I have to go with Valiant here, to be honest. This is a really hard one, right? Because obviously, if we went by previous stage, we should all be up on Fusion. I mean, even at the start of this stage, the Fusion had some important wins, right? Like they had wins over, particularly the Spitfire that I'm thinking of. In fact, once you take that away, though, they've remained close with a couple of teams. Let's go ahead and talk about where the Fusion actually have happened in this stage, though. Week 1, 3-2 loss to Boston. 3-1 win over Miami. Okay. Second one, 3-2.
That was Dreamcast for Boston, though. By the way, we had to put that out.
Yeah,
there.
3-2 victory over Houston and a 3-2 victory over London. Close games.
Yeah.
Week 3, that's where they drop off. 3-2 loss to New York. 3-1 loss to San Francisco, and back-to-back game.
See, it's and the New York one is one they failed to close out, because that was the first time I noticed New York running the Janus experiment, and they brought in Mano and Philly, just they were close. They just fell apart.
Speaking of close, Dynasty last week, 3-2 loss to them, and then the 3-2 barely made it victory over Shanghai Dragons. It's hard to feel up on them. I do feel like
they have no one. Looking at this, they have no one to blame but themselves if they don't make it to the playoffs.
And I think
the Dynasty should have been a win last. Holy hell, that should have been a win for that team last week.
And they put themselves into this position, and I think it's going to hurt them here against the Valiant. I think Valiant, if they play the correct roster here, can easily take this matchup against Philly, and I think they're going to. Even if they're already in, I think they're going to take this game serious, at least serious enough to win the matchup in a close one, maybe like a 3-2.
So many of their games have gone 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jax, what do you think?
That's why their map line is so awful. Huh. Okay. Did I say I'm taking Fusion, by the way?
Yeah, you're taking.
I expect chef coach Heidi to step it up. She'll watch the carbs. She'll give them a balanced breakfast, Lepolos. They will dominate on the Saturday. I mean, well, for going, they're playing for overall playoffs, and I think looking at the numbers now. I did not look at the map differential. That differential is far too big, and
well, I mean, some of that can come down, depending on how things happen. So maybe they can actually still steal that spot.
If the Gladiators somehow lose to Florida, I don't think they will. They need the Gladiators. See, the problem is they have to jump over the Gladiators and Houston. And Houston plays
with map score too. And like if the Valiant play decently against Boston in a close one, then that map score is going to be hard to overcome. Right.
The other problem is, they're not gonna make it. I'm still taking Philly. They're gonna play spoiler for the Valiant and they might drop the Valiant down to 4th place, but I don't think it really matters since first place gets to pick who they want to play. That being said, Leblos, you took the Valiant.
I do think this is going 5 though. Like what I'm gonna say is I do think Fusion are gonna win Volskaya and Route 66, and I think Valiant have good chances on Nimbani and Nepal here. Well, and I think it's gonna go 5. So
it's hard because we don't know who the 4 playoff teams are going to be.
Yeah.
But
and the importance of it.
As of right now, maybe you agree with me. I'll say Boston, New York, Valiant, and Gladiators in some order. Maybe you think Houston might sneak the Gladiator spot or Seoul, but I'm sticking with those 4: Boston, New York, Valiant, and Gladiators to make the playoffs. I don't know if you agree with that. Maybe you do.
I do. I think. Listen, I know there's a lot of jockeying around here, and this is where it gets interesting. I look for upsets. I'm excited about that possibility. Okay. But you have to go with what is evident here right now.
So, we think we both picked Boston to win both their games. Well, I know I picked the Gladiators. You picked Boston. Either way, who do you think? See, it's so hard to pick who would be in the semifinals, though. Like,
Because
if it
who?
goes the
Yeah.
way I'm thinking it, then New York will be in first and Boston will be in second. But you pick Boston to win both against me. Theirs in first place. So I'm thinking, okay, does Boston, since you pick Boston to win both their games, you're picking them to finish first. Do you think Boston picks the Gladiators to play them twice in 1 week going into the playoffs?
It depends on how their matchup went, to be honest. If they do, and it
Right.
was a clean victory, they play them
Right.
again right away. If it wasn't clean and they feel
Right.
like they're better against the Valiant, then they play the Valiant. Which I think it might be stronger for them, honestly, to play the Valiant overall.
Don't
Like I
know what
think,
the map pool is either. Okay.
yeah, I
Um,
think their matchup against the Valiant is likely to be stronger for them overall against Gladiators, and I'm thinking particularly because um, while Soon has been a good Widowmaker,
right.
Surefour popping off on it, plus the variability of their lineup in DPS, and Fissure particularly is a good counter to Uprising's Gamsu and Striker combination. Whereas I think the Valiant's weakness in having Fate up front is one that the Uprising can more easily exploit, as well as exploiting Agilities, honestly, when he's playing. And that's the honest truth of his play.
Agility's not as consistent as
I mean,
as
who
I'd
knows?
like
Like,
him
I
to be.
agree.
I mean,
Agilities could pop off and absolutely wreck them,
right.
and that's the chance you take. But you know, if New York Excelsior wins, though, I suspect they'll take Uprising immediately to give them another loss.
You think they take Uprising right off the bat,
I think so. I think that's what they do. But listen, let's cut this short and say, who do you think's going to win the overall stage 3?
This is so hard. This is hard, dude. I don't think it's okay.
Do
One,
you
I don't
think?
think it's the Valiant. I can take the Valiant out. I can take them out.
Yeah. You think Gladiators or whoever else has like? To me, this
The
is
thing
not
about the
hard.
Gladiators,
I think
Double O's,
NYXL is just going to cruise through the playoffs here
I mean,
to an easy win.
so in week 3, when the Gladiators took them 5, was that just because of the Janus experiment? Because they lost the first 2 maps and then they brought in Mano and took the Lex 3 and took it rather handily. At least the 2, it was 2-0
I
on
don't think it's
Oasis, 2-0
just
on Ilios.
I don't think it's just that. I think their level of prep that week was probably lower. Like they've been trying to reduce the number of hours for their players, which I think is a good thing for them overall, and will have better long-term returns.
Right.
And I think that will hit, particularly when you're talking about the extra play of this stage finals here. So I think
New York. Okay, I'm gonna pick New York to win it.
yeah, same.
I'm hoping my Gladiators upset. I think,
I mean,
and
obviously,
I'm not just saying this because they're my team. They have the potential to upset. It would just require incredible output from their players. And when I say incredible output, that means Surefour has to play at the level he's been playing, and Asher cannot disappear like he likes to do.
Yeah.
He just vanishes, man. And you're like, has anyone seen Asher? It's like, no, he's that pile of ash over there. And it's like he's just gone. I don't understand
I
why
agree with you.
it's so hard for him to just play at the same level. But as well as Boston is playing, I think New York is New York, and I think some of their players, like the Big Boss Man, are fully woke right now. And Sabobi will wake up even more, even though he's already my candidate for. Well, I can't say my candidate for MVP because he's got Jonak on his team.
But yeah, he's definitely. I have to go with New York Excelsior to win it all.
Their dive is fantastic.
I will put this asterisk though. Like each of these teams that we mentioned on the top 4 that we expect, Uprising, Valiant, Gladiators, particularly those 4, have the chance to upset the NYXL. If NYXL goes out, I expect they will go out in the quarterfinals due to not being fully prepared off the start.
I just don't see the Valiant beating them. I know they're there, so their record proves that they deserve to be there. I'm not sold on this team, man. I really am not sold on the Los Angeles Valiant.
If you have Agilities comes out with that what did he do on that Pharaoh that one match where he did like 36% or something like that of team day? Who does that? Like Agilities has moments where he's dominant in the game.
Yeah.
And it's insane. And if he comes out and he is popping, Valiant absolutely.
No, that's
can
right.
Do it.
They lost. It was Oasis against London. Like London beat them in week 3 on Oasis. London beat them on Oasis because Agilities came out on that damn Farah.
Well, no, I'm not talking about when they lost. He actually won one time on their Farah where he absolutely destroyed the team, right? So like this is what I mean by their variability. And you're right. He actually got dominated when they brought it out on University. which they shouldn't have done.
I don't
So
understand.
questions remain, Jax, but the question that we're answering right now is this is the
New
end
York.
of the podcast,
Yeah.
and Jax and I are both going with New York to win the
Again,
overall
don't be
stage.
surprised if Boston's
Jax,
dive is just that good and gets in on Jonak. Like, teams can pressure Jonak. New York like struggles,
yeah.
but we'll see.
Let's go ahead and wrap this up though, because
So, a good chance we do we do two smaller podcasts next week. One on Sunday at the regular time for the end of week 5, and then the one Monday night for the playoffs.
For the playoffs, yeah, that's probably how we're going to do things, guys. So do stay tuned for both of those. You can reach out to us at or on Twitter at OW Rundown. I'm at Leplos. He's at Jax_Blake. We do this weekly, as we were just saying, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. PST. Extra episode next week will be on Monday at 9 p.m. PST. That's live on Twitch TV/Leplos. Also find us on YouTube under YouTube for Leplos there. Is there anything else that we need to say in closing? Great clockwork, guys, in chat. I appreciate it.
That's it. It was great clockwork. We haven't had a clock for 45 minutes, dude. What kind of clockwork is that, Lepelos?
I'm what kind of clockwork? It's the kind that we see coming out of the Houston Outlaws.
Houston actually played clockwork and won a map, and I'm just saying, if I see Arhen before Mindo Kusai, I'm putting a ban on Houston Outlaws discussion for that week. I refuse to discuss them. You can talk if you want to. I won't talk. We'll have a shorter podcast. But I better not see Arhen before Mindo Kusai. That's right. Ridiculous.
We are closing it out there. Thanks, guys. All right, we're good. We're good to end off.
I swear, dude, they better not do that.